Everyone, welcome to the show. So the clown show continues in the Republican majority of the House of Representatives. The good news is that pedophile protector Jim Jordan will not be the next Speaker of the House. Jordan dropped out of the running after a third failed vote where he lost even more support from the two previous votes, and 25 House members voted against Jordan, or Republicans, I should say, in the House. Of course, all of the Democrats did. And what's really telling is that some people who voted against Jordan behind closed doors ended up voting for him in the open vote on the House floor. Total cowards. But to be fair, like I've shared with you guys, there are threats that have been issued. There's consequences, and, they're very real. They have continued. I shared with all of you last week that Republican Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks reported that she had received death threats. Well, now Republican Ken Buck says that he and his family have been threatened, and his landlord is evicting him from his office. Buck told NBC News, quote, "I've had 4 death threats. I've been evicted from my office in Colorado. I have notice of an eviction because the landlord is mad with my voting record on the speaker issue." And everybody in the conference is getting this. Family members have been approached and threatened. All kinds of things are going on. There's going to be some tension. In addition to Buck, Georgia Republican Drew Ferguson posted on Twitter, he wrote, quote, "Shortly after casting that vote, my family and I started receiving death threats. That is simply unacceptable, unforgivable, and will never be tolerated." And Ferguson told reporters, quote, "Following the first vote, I had genuine concerns about the threatening tactics and pressure campaigns Jordan and his allies were using to leverage members of their votes. I discussed this directly with Jim and plan to support him on the second ballot. When the pressure campaigns and attacks on fellow members ramped up, it became clear to me that the House Republican Conference does not need a bully as the speaker." New York Republican Nick LaLota, I think is how you say it. It's LaLota or LaLota. Anyway, he also shared a threat that he had received. LaLota posted this threat on Twitter, and it said, quote, "Go fuck yourself and die. If I see your face, I will whip all your hair out of your fucking head, you fucking scumbag." As usual, no periods, all run-on sentences, random punctuation in the wrong places. These are not the sharpest tools in the shed. Anyway, the Washington Post reports that at least 7 Republicans have reported receiving threats or violence, or they were at least pressured, and also their families and or their staff members. And some have been forced to increase their security because of this. I mean, I would feel sorry for them, but they kind of brought this on themselves, right? They refused to stand up to Trump. They refused to stand up to MAGA. They're making these votes or casting their votes against Jordan in private. So what do they think was going to happen to their party? When you don't stand up against violence, against threats against other people, guess what? It comes back around, it smacks you right in the face. It's the way it works. So where does that leave us? Well, there are 2 active wars going on, right? Some that somewhat involve the US, more than somewhat, and we're nearing a government shutdown at the end of the month. So we have 9 Republicans now who've thrown their hat in the ring. They're each going to try to win over House Republicans. There's going to be a candidate forum that's scheduled for tonight. And here's what each of them, because I thought this was interesting, here's what each of them had to say about the January 6th attack on our Capitol. Many will not have the support of MAGA or Trump or the Trump minions in the House. This list, by the way, was put together by Newsweek. Like I said, it was very interesting. Tom Emmer of Minnesota said, quote, "Today's events in Washington were an unacceptable display of violence that runs counter to everything we stand for as a country." So as of now, he is seen as a front runner, but for obvious reasons, like I said, the MAGA crowd is not going to like him. Next is Austin Scott of Georgia. Scott described January 6th and the violence and destruction, those were his words, as, quote, disgraceful. And he said, quote, the criticism of the U.S. Capitol Police is also disgraceful. And it is my understanding that more than 50 Capitol Police were injured. Ended up being almost 150, but he also said, quote, I believe my decision to support the Electoral College fulfills my sworn oath to the Constitution. So obviously he's not going to be a popular one with MAGA. Oklahoma Representative Kevin Hern called January 6th a, quote, sad day in our nation's history. However, he still pushed election fraud conspiracy BS, saying, quote, I have a duty to stand firm with the millions of Americans across the country who share deep and legitimate concerns about the integrity of our election system and the unconstitutional changes to the election laws in certain states during the presidential election. Like I said, what do these people expect? You're inciting violence by perpetuating this myth that the election was stolen. So not exactly an honest actor. Next up is Republican Brian Donalds. As you would expect from a Florida man, Donalds voted against certifying the election results, even though he condemned the, quote, lawless vigilantes. Alabama Republican Gary Palmer tried to have it both ways as well. He said, quote, I strongly condemn the attack on the Capitol last week. There is no excuse for it, and I hope everyone who took any part will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But I do not believe an impeachment is beneficial to our country at this difficult moment. In short, this move will only encourage deeper division and bitterness on all sides at a time when we desperately need to unify. No, not impeaching would have infuriated the left and all logical people who are independents and Republicans, and yes, there are still some out there. Had you not impeached, there would have been a complete uprising throughout the country. These people are delusional. Mike Johnson of Louisiana had a similar stance. He objected to the certification of the election results in Arizona and Pennsylvania, but then he condemned the Republican National Committee statement about January 6th being legitimate political discourse. Marine veteran and Michigan Republican lawmaker Jack Bergman also objected to the Arizona and Pennsylvania results, but then he later said, quote, those who broke the law and participated in this effort should receive maximum punishment. These actions undermine our very foundation. I didn't fight for our country for 40 years to see us devolve into settling political disputes by violence and intimidation. No, you just fought for the country for 40 years so that you could come in and overturn a legitimate election and undermine the Constitution and further the divide in the country and further the violence and intimidation. Unbelievable. Pete Sessions of Texas said he didn't regret voting against the election results. And then 1 year after the Capitol attack, he said, quote, there's no question in my mind that the people who participated in this were criminals. There's no question in my mind that people also who were there did not walk into the building to destroy it. Pennsylvania Rep. Dan Muser said that January 6th was, quote, a day that was intended to debate the importance of election integrity and the rule of law tragically became a day that will be a black mark on our nation's history. Nevertheless, the work of this House must go on, as America will go on. And then he also thanked the police for their, quote, selfless actions. So, yeah, talking out of both sides of his mouth again. No, there was no question about election integrity, you jackass. So, anyway, it's a mixed bag. All of the Republicans have to choose wisely, of course, based on their particular district. I'll let you know when I hear more about this shit show, clown show, whatever you want to call it. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.